Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to the second lecture of Data and Computer Communication course. This course is offered in the third semester of Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering Technology. My name is Engineer Jafar Ali and I am your instructor for this course. Let's start with the recapitulation of the previous lecture. In the previous class, we have discussed about the introduction to data communication. We learned that what is data and what is communication and what this together means. After that, we learned about different components of data communication that are involved in the process of communication. After that, we learned about different data transmission modes. There was simplex, half duplex, and full duplex. Later on, we discuss about different network topologies, that how these nodes and terminals or users can be joined to form a communication system network. Then we discussed about different network model, and these network models were based on different coverage areas. We looked over WAN, that is wide area network, LAN, local area network, and several other network coverage areas with respect to their coverage. Then we looked at different network devices that are basically involved in the communication system. We looked over hub, switch, router, modem, and any other device in the previous class. After that, we discussed about different switching techniques. We learned about basically circuit switching and packet switching, along with its further two types, that is datagram and virtual circuit switching. And we discussed their pros and cons as well. We know that in circuit switching there is fixed path between transmitter and receiver, while in packet switching there is no fixed path and each packet decides that which path it has to follow. In the last of the previous lecture, we discussed about different performance matrices that are used to judge a communication network. If you want to check the effectiveness of a network, there are several parameters that you can check to judge a communication network. In today's class, we will be learning about signals along with its different types. We will be looking at basically two types of signals. In your coming semester, that is fourth one, in that semester you will be learning a course of signals and system, and in that course you will be learning about 10 to 12 more types of signals, but there are two basic types, one is analog and another one is digital, and that will be enough for this course. So I will be teaching you these two signals. After that, we will go in the depth of multiplexing, that what is multiplexing and what are their types of multiplexing, and in the end of the lecture I will discuss about the layer architecture of any network and how OSI model is built on this layer architecture mechanism. So starting with signal, what are signals? Signals are some variables that carry some information. If you want to understand your language and hide it too from other users, you can embed your information or data into some signal, and this signal won't be understandable to others except then the receiver by itself. But for that reason, you have to make a synchronization between the transmitter and the receiver. It is also described as a function of one or more variables. If it is a function of one variable, this is known as unidimensional signal, and if the signal is a factor or is a function of multiple variables, so it can be termed as multidimensional signal. A function of one or more variables that convey information on a nature of a physical phenomena. This is another definition. And as I've told you, that this is basically one dimensional signal which depends on only a single variable. For example, if you listen only to my audio, that is a single dimensional signal. But if you can see audio as well as my video in the lecture, this is basically two-dimensional signal. And in this lecture you are basically seeing three dimensions. You are also able to see my screen, so you are getting three signals. One is my voice, one is my video, and the third one is this slide screen share. Now there are basically two types of signal. One is analog, another one is digital. Analog signal is that signal that is continuous signal. It has infinite values and it has more exact values, but it is more difficult to work with. Let me show you with examples along with the diagram in the later slide, but for now we will discuss both of these. And the digital signal, basically the signal is discrete. It has finite range of values, and it is not as exact as analog, but it is very easy to work with. Now, application of digital signal is modern days PCs or your mobile phone or any other latest electronic gadget that you have. The working of digital signals are more reliable and more accurate. Digital signals have a priority over analog signals. Now let me discuss this slide. In analog signal, basically I told you that this signal is continuous signal. It means for any value of x, you will be getting some value of y. If I draw this random signal, so you see that for every x value, let's say this is x1, so you are getting some y. This is x2, let's say you are getting some y that will be negative. For every x value you are getting some y, and this range of y is basically infinite. So this is why this is known as analog signal. And what is digital signal? Digital signal is discrete. It means that you will be not getting every value. For every value of x you will be not getting y. It means that you see that for here for x, this is the value of, let's say, y, that is 1, and for, let's say, this is equal to x is equal to 2, you are not getting any value. This is the same previous value, so meaning this signal and signal is same. This means the signal is discrete. And you see that what is meant by finite range of values. The range of values will be finite. Either it will be +1 and 0, or it may be +1 or -1. So there will be a finite range of y values, whereas in analog signal there was infinite range. You are getting y over here, you are getting y over here. For every point of x you are getting a different y. So there was infinite value, infinite range for y. So this is the basic difference between digital signal and analog signals. And let me tell you that what are the disadvantages of analog signal that mostly people prefer to the digital system or digital signal. If you build an analog signal, let's say you have built analog signal and you want some modifications in the design or in the parameters, so it is not possible to modify the analog system or analog signal, and the reason is because you have to redesign all the system. Let's say if you want just this portion to cut off, it will not be possible for an analog signal, because you will have to design another system with a whole new specifications. While in digital signal this will be much easier. If you want to modify your system, you can easily adjust some coding techniques or some any other methodology, and because this signal works on binary data, and you can manipulate these binary data to work along as your desire. So this is more user friendly as compared to this system. And basically analog signal are more susceptible to noise. It means noise can affect analog signal in much quantity as respect to digital signals. Digital signals are less susceptible to noise. Now coming towards the major topic of today's class, multiplexing. What is multiplexing? If you if let's say there are n users in the transmission side and there are y users, multiple users on the receiving hand side, so there will be you will be needing a communication channel from the transmitter towards the receiver. But it will be very hard for you to make different channels and deploy different cables from different users towards different user at the receiving end. You will have to pay a lot of cost, a lot of cable, a lot of resources to that. So to cope this problem, a technique has been involved, and that is known as multiplexing. What does multiplexing means? You basically share the medium among different users. You basically multiply or multiplex different signal and merge them into one medium, and this medium must be divided in such a way that every user should be given an opportunity to transmit that data or to use that channel. And what are the benefits of multiplexing. Multiplexing basically provides bandwidth efficiency. And what does this mean? Let's say there is a user X and there is user Y at the receiving end, and X want to communicate with Y, so you have allocated or deployed a channel. After that, let's say there is another user A who wants to communicate with another user B, and you have deployed a channel again for that. But you see, after some time, X will not be transmitting any data to Y, so this channel or this bandwidth or this resource will be waste, will be of waste. So to work more efficiently, what we do, we basically merge these users, the data of these users, and we give the shared medium to all of them. Let's And the benefit of that is, if in future X is not transmitting any data, so A will be able to transmit more data on that medium at same time, and A will be getting much higher speed and less delay. And because of that, you have achieved bandwidth efficiency or resource efficiency. You have reduced the amount of resources required by 2 to 1. Now imagine that there are 100 users on the sender side and 200 users on the receiving hand side. So just imagine how much in bandwidth or resources you can save using this technique, multiplexing technique. Now there are three basic types of multiple techniques. One is known as FDM, that is frequency division multiplexing. The other one is known as TDM, time division multiplexing, which has further two types, synchronous and statistical. And the last one that we will be discussing in today's class is wavelength division multiplexing, and this is mostly used in optical fiber communication. Now we look at the different devices that are involved in this multiplexing. So you need a MUX, that is a multiplexer on the transmission side, and you need a DMUX, that is known as demultiplexer on the receiving hand side. Now you see that there are n inputs from n different users, and it is given to the MUX, and the MUX has basically merged all these n inputs into one link. But this one link should be able to develop n channels, that it has to divide this channel or this link among n different channels, and each channel will be allocated for different user. And at the receiving end side, there is a demultiplexer which takes the data from one link, and the data is of n channels, and it provides the user the relevant data. Let's say user 1 has transmitted the data to user A, and the message basically is, let's say, capital A. So how DMUX will be able to cut this entire data and chop this A out and provide it to A. So basically this will be the working operation of DMUX. It will be providing relevant information to the relevant user. If this A is not for B or any other user, it will not provide it to them. If it is only for A, so this DMUX will be responsible to deliver this message only to A from this chunk of messages that it has retrieved from a single line. So you have seen that this is more efficient as compared to another technique. If it was not this technique, you will have to deploy many cables from transmitter towards receiver, and it costs a lot in that scenario. So basically you achieve very much efficiency, performance efficiency in this case by reducing the cost. Now let us look at the first type of multiplexing, that is FDM, frequency division multiplexing. FDM is basically the allocation of non-overlapping frequency ranges that is allocated to each user or signal on a medium. Thus all the signals are transmitted at the same time, but they are transmitted at using different frequencies. A multiplexer accepts inputs and assigns frequencies to each device. Basically this is the responsibility of the multiplexer, that it accepts the inputs and it assigns that input a specific frequency. But this frequency should not be allocated to any other user to avoid collision. After that, this multiplexer is attached to high-speed communication line, and through which the data is transmitted towards the receiver to a very long path. And in the last, this is basically the disadvantage of FDM, which, as FDM is basically analog multiplexing, so it is more susceptible to noise. Now let us look at the example of FDM. In the diagram, you can see that there are three users: user 1, user 2, and user 3, and each want to transmit different data to their respective receivers. Now, what is the purpose of this multiplexer, or what is the property of this multiplexer? This multiplexer basically modulate means changes the value. What is modulation? Modulation is a mixing of low frequency signal to a high frequency signal. And what is the benefit of doing this? Because of this, the signal is able to travel more further, as compared to this low frequency signals are not able to travel long distances. So to cope that problem, it is multiplexed with basically a high frequency carrier. So, but this frequency should be different from this frequency, and these both frequencies should be different from this frequency. These frequencies should not be overlapped. User 1 has given this signal and it wants to transmit to another receiver at any other end. So basically the mux will be modulate it with different frequency. Then there comes the user 2. Same demux will not allocate the earlier frequency, it will decide another frequency and it will modulate the other signal with different frequency. And in the third one case, if the third input comes, the mux, basically the multiplexer, will be assigning different frequency to this user and it will modulate the signal according to that frequency. Now after modulation, you can see that this signal has become this, and this signal has become this shape, and this signal is now become this signal. Does it do? It basically adds all these signals and it form a mixed signal like that. And this signal is basically traveled, is pushed on the high communication link. Now let us see what does the receiving side do. Receiving side basically perform a demultiplexing. You see, this signal was transmitted from the transmission side. Now this is received at the receiver end. And what does the demultiplexer do? Demultiplexer will do the same but in the reverse order. It will first filter different frequencies using different filters. And what is filter? Filter is basically a device that separates a specific frequency from a mixed signal. So in this multiplexer will be taking out this signal from this signal, and this filter 2, let's say, will be able to separate this signal from this signal, and filter 3 will be performing the function of separating this signal from this signal. Now you have got three signals that is separated from a combined signal. And what does a demodulator do? Basically, demodulator again multiplies the same frequency but with a different phase to this signal, and you will get the original signal here. Similarly, this modulator will multiply this signal with the filtered signal that you just filtered out, and it will provide you this signal back. And let's say these are user A, B, and C. So A1 wanted to transmit to B. Let me show you. Let's say this was 1. Let's say 1 wanted to transmit the signal to A, and 2 wanted to transmit its signal to B, and 3 wanted to transmit its signal to C. So by using this combination of multiplexing and demultiplexing, this process can be achieved very easily. Now what are the applications of FDM? You can see that analog signaling, because FDM is using analog signals to transmit the signal. So mostly the earlier systems that were developed in earlier ages is of FDM. This is basically using FDM. The amps, the cellular phone system mostly use FDM. Even nowadays, because of its low cost, it is mostly implemented in that technologies that are more user friendly. And this technique is basically the oldest techniques, and as I've told you that this signals is basically analog signal, so it is more susceptible to noise. it means the noise can affect these signals very much as compared to digital signals. Now let us look at the example from a book. Assume that there is a voice channel that occupies 4 kilohertz of bandwidth, and we need to combine three different voice channels into one link with a bandwidth of 12 kilohertz. You have basically three voice channels, and you have a bandwidth. The voice channel occupies 4 kilo, and you have three voice channel. So it means that you have 4 multiplied by 3, 12 kilohertz of bandwidth. You require at least 12 kilohertz of bandwidth, and you have to allocate this from 20 to 32 kilohertz. Now this is the now it is asked from you that you have to show the configuration using the frequency domain, and you have to assume no guard bands. Now you see the solution is very simple. You have three different users, let's say 1, 2, 3, and each user has the voice channel of 4 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz, and again 4 kilohertz, and you are given the total bandwidth of the link, that is 12, also 12. So it is very easy to allocate this 12 kilohertz into this 12 kilohertz. You just start with allocating the user A from 20 to 24. Let me show the solution. You see the solution is over here. It is very easy to understand. The user 1 had a 4 kilohertz voice channel. Similarly, user 2 has also the 4 kilohertz voice channel, and user 3 will also be having the same 4 kilohertz voice channel, and you want to allocate different frequencies. So you see the modulator basically gave 20 to 24 kilohertz to the first user. The second modulator gives 24 to 28 kilohertz to the second user, and the third modulator gives the last area or last band to the third user. Now it was given that you are given with only 20 to 32 kilohertz of bandwidth of the link. This is the basically link of the bandwidth. Now suppose that there comes a fourth user, so you will not be able to adjust that user into the system too, because the bandwidth of the link is low as compared to the total bandwidth that is of different users. So for, let's say there is 4 users, user 1, user 2, user 3, and there comes a user 4, and each of them are having of 4 kilohertz. So basically you will be needing 16 kilohertz, at least 16 kilohertz of the link. But here in the question they have told you that the link, the bandwidth of the link is basically 32 minus 20, 12 kilohertz. So it will not be possible for you to adjust this 16 kilohertz into the 12 kilohertz channel, and for that you will be needing another plus 4, that is you will be needing at least 16 kilohertz of link, assuming there are no guard bands. Now what is guard band? Let me show you. Now if you have to allocate these users and assume that they are all having 2 kilohertz of voice channels, let's say this is from 0 to 2, this is from 0 to 2, and this is from 0 to 2 as well. So total bandwidth that you will be needing that on the link will be 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6, and you are given with 32 minus 20, 12. This is the basically bandwidth of the channel of the link basically that was given in the question. The link of the bandwidth of the link is basically 12 kilohertz, and you only need 6 kilohertz. Now it is up to you that how you configure it. You may assign 20 to 22 to the first user, then from 22 to 24 to the second user, and you can also assign the third user from 24 to 26. So you have assigned these frequencies to different users, but you have not kept a guard band between them. It means if a message is a little bit delayed or a noise comes, it could damage the signal. Now what is the good methodology? The methodology is that you leave some space between the allocation. For example, if you have allocated 20 to 22 kilohertz to the first user, do not assign the next frequency. Leave a space of at least 1 or 2 kilohertz between the users. So you should assign the next frequency, let's say from 24 to 26. You have left basically 2 kilohertz, and in the last case basically you should assign 28 to 30 kilohertz. So this, in this case, you have left the guard periods or the guard bands which will be able to tackle the noise parameters in the future. So this is the brief example which explains the process of FDM very easily. This is another example, and it is asked to allocate. You have given the 5 channels, and each channel is of 100 kilohertz, and they are multiplexed. They are need to be multiplexed. It is asked that what is the minimum bandwidth that is required of the link if there is a need of a guard band of 4 kilohertz. You are given with 5 channels, and each channel is of 100 kilohertz. So 5 times 100 means 500. So 500 will be only allocated to the link, but it is also mentioned that you have to put a guard band between each user. So you know that between 5 users, 1 2 3 4 5, you know that between 5 users there are basically 4 guard band, 1 guard band, 2 guard band, 3 guard band, and 4 guard band. Do you see that? And each guard band is having um, um, uh, and each guard band is of 10 kilohertz. So you have to allocate 10 times 4 also. So the total frequency that you will be needing for the link will be, the total bandwidth will be 500 plus 40. 4 times 10 is 40. So the total bandwidth of the link should be approximately or at least 540. Now look at the example. You see there is an example. There are 5 channels, 1 2 3 4 and 5. So 500 is allocated to the user, and between every user there are 10 kilohertz of guard band. So there are 10 20 30 and 40 kilohertz of guard band and 500 kilohertz of the user frequency. So the minimum link that you will be needing will be of a bandwidth 540 kilohertz. Now looking at the time division multiplexing. In the time division multiplexing, you have to share the medium according to the time. In the previous FDM, you divided the channel in the frequency domain, but now you have to divide it in time. And in time, what does it mean? You have to basically, digital signaling is used in this technique. And by time division, it means it could be synchronous or it could be statistical, or also known as asynchronous. Now let us look at what is synchronous and asynchronous. In synchronous TDM, each user is allowed to participate in the communication. Let's say first slot will be given to the first user, the second time slot will be given to the second user, the third time slot will be given to the third user, and the fourth time slot will be given to the fourth user. And this method will continue repeatedly again and again. Each user will be given the same time. Now this is known as synchronous time division multiplexing, in which you are giving each user the same time slot. There is another methodology by which you can also implement this. Let's say one user wants 2 time slots and he is willing to pay for that. So you can also do that in synchronous division multiplexing. You can assign 2 inputs, 2 slots to a single user. You can see that in this diagram the system has allocated 2 time slots to basically user 1. So there will be 2 A's two time slot for A, one time slot for B, and one time slot for C, and one time slot for D. And again there will be two time slots for A. So by using this technique, you can also deploy more slots to a specific user if he is willing to pay more price and more cost. Now what is the problem with this, basically a synchronous TDM? Let's say if the user is idle, or it's let's say turned off. Let's say this system is not a part of a network and it has left the network, or it is turned off. So there will be a huge chance that the time slot will be given to this systems by the multiplexer. D wants to transmit the data, but after a first time slot, that other time slot is allocated to different user. So it will not take, the multiplexer will not take the data from this user, because it's the time for another user to send the data. But the another user is idle or switched off, so it will be injustice with this user. You can see that in the first time slot, user 1 has sent the data D, and all the other three time slots are sent empty while D was waiting for his turn. So there was not an efficient use of allocation of resources among the users. So for that reason, another technique has been developed, and that is known as statistical time division multiplexing. And what does this do basically? This In this technique, the multiplexer will judge that which system is idle and which system wants to transmit the data, and according to that judgment, it will allocate time slot. You can see that in this case, user A and C are active, and B and D are idle, or they are powered off. So it will not assign time slots to these system. This system will be not part of a network, and only A and C will be transmitting the data. After some time, it will also again, let's say B comes in and join the network and want to transmit some data. So based on the statistical readings that this multiplexer will be getting after some time periodically, it will judge that B is now active and he wants to transmit the data. So he will put a time slot for B as well in the coming time. So by using statistical analysis or statistical multiplexer technique, we could use more efficient, we could use the bandwidth or the resources more efficient as compared to synchronous time division multiplexing. Now what is FDM basically? Now what is wavelength division multiplexing? This is mostly used in fiber optic communications, where there is a scene of light, the light acts as a carrier. So in that scenario, the multiplexer divides the channel into different wavelengths, and each user has allocated a different wavelength, and on that wavelength, that user transmits the data. This is mostly used in fiber optics communication, where light is the source. So you can easily understand that wavelength is more uh, understandable in case of light. This last technique, that is the most important technique, and this is used nowadays, is basically CDM, that is code division multiplexing. In this technique, multiple devices are allowed to transmit the data on the same medium, and that too with the same time. But there are some techniques in it that you have to assign different codes. You have to assign different codes to each transmitting device. Each transmitting device will be using same frequency and same time, but on that message a different code will be applied, and this code will be decoded only by the receiver, their desired receiver at the receiving end. So this is now CDM. Now this is the brief summary of all the techniques that we have studied till now. In FDM has the advantage that it is simple, it is more popular with radio, TV, cable TV, and it is relatively less expensive, or you can say cheap. That is why it is mostly used. And what are the disadvantages of FDM? Basically, as I've told you that FDM works on analog systems, so basically it will be more susceptible to noise, and it will be a limited frequency ranges. It provides a limited frequency ranges. Similarly, synchronous has digital signal and that are very easy to work with, and this is relatively simple as well. But in synchronous TDM, you see that there is a lot of waste in the bandwidth or resources, in specifically in idle state. When the system has gone idle, there is a delay for other users to wait for their turn. In the statistical TDM, now you are using the bandwidth or resources more efficiently, but the disadvantage of this system that this is more complex, a bit more complex, not that much complex as compared to synchronous. And the wavelength division multiplexing, they are very high capacities over fiber, let's say, and they are very much scalable. But the reason that is not uh, that it is not in mostly our favor, that is cost. It is more costly and most expensive as compared to all of other techniques. And in CDM is basically more CDM are in more in use nowadays because of its scalability and its large handling capacity. It can handle multiple users at the same time, because all you need is just a code, and a code can be generated by a software tool or by any other technique. You just have to create a new code for a different user, and that's it. You do not have to allocate any other resource or any other physical resource, bandwidth or time slot to any user. But the system in CDM is more complex, but due to the advancement in technology, it is very much achievable nowadays. Now coming towards the last topic of today's class, that what is layered architecture, what is layering, why do we use it, what are the basic principles of layered architecture, and what is OSI reference model, and what are the functions of several models. So we will be discussing these topics. Some of this will be discussed in today's class, and most of them will be discussed in later 2 or 3 classes. So let's start layering. Layering basically is following all the protocols by a single entity is not possible. You see, if you have developed a communication system or a network, it is not possible for a single body to handle all the communication, all its relevant data or information in a single piece or at a single time. What do we do? We basically divide and rule. What does it mean? We basically divide the complex structure into small simple structures, and this is basically known as modular approach or layer approach. By this I mean that taking the whole system at once is much more difficult to handle. So what is the best possible way to cope this problem? We basically develop a system and this architecture that it divides a complex problem into small simple problems, and by achieving this we are able to look at into different problems at very small in a very small manner. And in this system, each module can be developed and tested independently. Let's say you have developed a system, and in that too in modular approach by using different portions of system, and at the last you just sum that up. Um, and in the future, let's say you want to add some small portion, so it will be much easier for you to understand that where should this portion be placed. But if you have developed a single body that is handling all the communication system or any protocols in the network communication, so it will be very hard for you. You are a developer, and it will be very hard for you by yourself that you where should you place another module or that coding that you want to modify. So it is very much easy in modules, or you say layers. So what are the basic rules of layering? You see that there are several rules that how you can divide a network and into how many modules or how many layers. So for that, the first rule is that the number of modules or layers, we will call it layers from now on. Um, Number of layers should be optimum. What does it mean by optimum? It should not be greater too much that the system becomes too heavy or too much complex, and it should not be too less that the system become more complex. You see, when you merge many functions and many protocols in a single body or single entity, you are making it more complex. So it should not, the quantity of layers should not be uh, as much high, and it should not be that much low as well. And another rule of this layering is basically you have to put similar functions together. Let's say you have divided any bigger network into two modules. Let's say you have achieved the optimum number of layers, and now you want to place some functions over here. So all the functions relevant to each other should be put it in the same layer. It is not possible, or it is not recommended or suggested that you are using the same function. Let's say you are using the function addition over here, and you are using the same function over here. So it is not good way. If you are used a plus over here, you should be using any other functions relevant to plus within this layer. Let's say multiplication is relevant to plus, so you should place the multiplication application or its protocols over here, not in the another layer. And only create a layer when it is needed. Do not create specific layer for a specific network. Let's say you have to modify and you have to add multiplication, so do not create another layer, because you know by default multiplication is in the form of multiplication can be expressed in the form of addition. So you can adjust that in this layer. So this will there will be no need for another layer for any other function. And you should be able to understand and to make sure that all these layers are made compatible to each other. And what does I mean by compatibility? It means that if you have changed or modified a small portion of a layer, it is not be appreciated if another layer stop working. So your module or your architecture, your model should be in that way that if you change a small portion of any module, it should not harm or affect the operation of another layer. If by changing one layer, whole system gets stopped because it is not this system or this module stop working because of modification of this layer, so it is not compatible with each other. So your system should be compatible with each other. The modules should be compatible with each other. So that's all for today's lecture. In this lecture we have learned about signals and the types. We'll discuss about multiplexing and different types of multiplexing. And in the last of the lecture we have discussed the motivation of layer architecture. And in the coming class we will see the details of layer architecture, starting with the OSI model, that is Open System Interconnection model. And I hope to see you in the class. If you have any question, you can write it down, and we will discuss that questions in class inshallah. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.